Hello and welcome to another episode of The Peer Project. My name is Chris Duke. Thank you so much for joining me again on this amazing episode with the legendary Mike Wozniak. Now, I want to say thank you to you for a whole load of different things, okay? Now, some of you had a lot to say recently about my editing, and honestly, I hear you, okay? I'm still learning. I'm still improving, and I really appreciate the feedback. Even the overly negative ones. And this whole project has grown faster than I ever imagined. And even one of the clips from the podcast last week just hit over 400,000 views. And we've actually now surpassed 1 million views across the whole channel as well, which is amazing. So thanks to you for sharing it, for shouting about it, and for supporting it. I promise I will try and up my game with the editing as and when it comes along. Now, this episode is sponsored by me. Now, if you don't know, my name's Chris. I'm a broadcaster, a speaker, author, creative coach. Everything I do is about helping people speak up, about helping people connect, and about helping them be heard. Whether it's confidence coaching for kids, voiceovers that bring your brand to life, podcasting with big laughs and honest chats, or workshops that actually make a difference, then that's what I live for. If you're looking to build confidence, tell your story, or just collaborate on something brilliant, visit me on chrisduke.co.uk and you'll find everything there. Quick note, the website isn't quite finished yet, but give it a couple of days, hopefully we'll get it up there and finished. And don't forget as well, if you enjoy this episode and want to help me keep it all going, then you can join the Peer Project Supporters Club. It's at thepeerproject.co.uk/supporters, and even a small amount every month makes a massive difference. Now, enough of me. Let's get into this episode with the funniest, the sharpest man I think I've ever spoken to, Mike Wozniak. How's things anyway?
Pretty good, thanks. Yeah, just fiddling about, doing a bit of this, bit of that. Just got back from Machynlleth Comedy Festival, which is, I don't know if you've ever been. Have you been to the Mac Festival, Mid Wales?
No, definitely not. No, I'm about 30 minutes away from Edinburgh, so that's where, that's all the festivals I go to.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's lovely. I think it's probably the loveliest comedy festival going. Certainly in the UK. Yeah, it's lush.
And were you performing there?
Yeah, it's just a really nice. It's a beautiful part of Wales, anyway. And there's lots of shows going, lots of work in progress shows, lots of touring shows, mixed bag.
Mm-hmm.
People squeeze it in. We had nice weather this year. It's a nice little sort of community feel. And people popping up in other people's shows, all that kind of thing. It's lush. If you've got comedy fans who are listening who fancy the idea of a May weekend in Wales, they should look into it. Can't recommend it enough.
Lush is a perfect Welsh word to describe it as well, eh?
Right. Indeed.
Well, you've got a bit of a Welsh background anyway, have you not? Is that right?
I've got, one side of the family is Welsh provenance. The other side is Polish. So I have an affection for the place, for sure. Yeah.
Let me ask you then just quickly about Edinburgh. Seeing as it's only like half an hour away from me.
Yeah.
You pretty much had a good good run up in Edinburgh, haven't you?
Yeah, I haven't been for a while though, to be honest. I did. I mean, that's where I sort of not quite started, but like a lot of people, that's a place where I would go off and do shows, and I mean, even as a student, I was sort of doing shows, but we'd go for like sort of a week, put on quite a sort of rough sketch show for a week and have an excellent time. But yeah, certainly when I started and went full time with comedy at Edinburgh, I mean, the world has already changed massively. Edinburgh was still pivotal. I think it's still a thing, but it's definitely not as pivotal as it was back in the day. But I had a lovely time up there. But I've been meaning to go back up for quite a while, but I've not been. You've got the luxury of getting there, half an hour away, right? So you didn't have to spend £18,000 a night. No, accommodation.
Of course. And I'm definitely no way.
So that is causing problems for people at the moment. Yeah, the people I feel sorry for at the moment are the people who. Yeah, like it's just because it shouldn't be an impediment. Do you know what I mean? Edinburgh, the whole idea of Edinburgh is that, with the Fringe at least, the whole idea was that anyone could take a show. It's completely unselected and all the rest of it. But I think we're in a phase again now where actually, unless you've got some sort of financial backing somewhere, you're in a bit of a pickle getting there in the first place, which is not, just not the game.
You mentioned studying there. Now, I only found this out about you a couple of days ago, that you studied medicine.
I did, yeah. It's a long time ago, though.
You're a former doctor as well, so you've got briefly, you actually did practice.
Yeah, briefly, just sort of hospital, sort of grunt, basically. Yeah.
So was comedy always in the background for you then?
It was. There's always a passion. It was not something I ever thought you sort of could do as a job or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? But I think certainly if you came from a sort of relatively normal background, I sort of assumed that you'd had to be sort of raised in the circus or I don't know, just had a sort of remarkable life, or you just sort of immediately you just came out like Billy Connolly and that was it. So I hadn't really considered it ever. But I was at medical school, and medical schools across the nation, there's a tradition of the review, this comedy review. So there was a scene where all of a sudden, if you were someone who was a bit obsessed with comedy and loved comedy and was always watching stuff, all right, oh, hang on, sorry, that's Pamela who's come in.
I've heard about Pamela.
Then she's gone, and and then there was a little outlet, and for most people, that outlet was enough. You'd get it out of your system in your 5-6 years at med school. But med school is also, generally speaking, it's full of people who've, well, like a lot of places, had a little something on the side that they sort of would have daydreams about doing instead. Where I went, we had loads of musicians, loads of really, really good musicians, and lots of people who sort of had to make the choice as a very young person at the age of 16, 17. Do they give it a go with music, or do they pursue medicine? And most people tend to get encouraged towards doing the safer public servant route with a pension, all the rest of it.
And what was the decision for you then to try and go for the passion over the?
No, not then. Because I didn't for a second think that I had any business doing that. I mean, I loved doing it, and there was a little group of us that didn't let it go, and we kept trying to do more shows, and we'd take shows to other places and try and get in clubs if we could, and do little Edinburgh runs and all the rest of it. And then we qualified and went to work, and most of the guys at that point stopped. Not all, by all means, but I sort of couldn't stop, and found myself doing more and more in my spare time, until it got to the point in the last year I was sort of gigging every night that I wasn't on call, and I think it must have been 28 or something when I made the leap. But that wasn't. I mean, it was an easy leap to make, really, because I had the relative recklessness of youth. I didn't have kids or a mortgage or anything along those lines, and had an extremely supportive partner. So I'm one of the lucky ones. There was safety nets, do you know, for me. There were safety nets, and even like my sort of the family that I'm from, and there's the conscious safety nets, and there's the sort of unconscious safety nets that I perhaps only really appreciate now, would have been in the back of my head, where for most people don't have that, which is why back to the Edinburgh point, I'm a bit sad about the way how expensive that's become for people who are putting more on the line. And also, I'm from a generation that didn't finish medical school with £100,000 of debt. If I was 28 now, I mean, safety nets or no, I wouldn't for a moment be able to have made that leap. Not for a moment. I'd have, because a lot of it, that's just going to be sitting there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So a lot of it is down to timing as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And was it 2008 that you had the comedy competition that kind of kickstarted all?
2008 was my first solo Edinburgh, and that was the one where, that enabled me to go full time, because up until that point, I mean, I was on the open mic circuit, really. Those are the gigs that I was doing, and I like once in a blue moon I'd get a paid gig, but I mean they would. By that time, the number of paid gigs I would have had would have been in single figures, and they would have been like 20 quid or something. Do you know what I mean? So I couldn't even say I was semi-professional, but just doing the solo Edinburgh, and then was nominated for the Newcomer Award, and that is what changed things massively. That then meant that, you know, the various bookers who were running gigs that I'd been trying to get into, not getting to, suddenly they said, yeah, okay, fine, you can come and you can do the middle spot and whatever. And all of a sudden I could, you know, if I was gigging pretty much every night, I could just about, you know, make a living, and led to things like getting an agent. Is the occasional other little bit of work would come along, you know, whether it's a bit of writing or the odd sort of comedy acting gig, or, you know, and these things, all of a sudden you're just about making a living, and you can make a leap.
Was in terms of acting, was that something that you'd ever considered doing? Or well, obviously
No.
you ended up acting, but I'm talking about, like, you obviously did a lot of stand up, and that's where you were kind of heading towards. In terms of the acting, where did that come from?
I mean, that's just being a chancer. That's being a pure chance. I mean, I did a tiny bit at school, but the stuff I did at school, I don't think I realised I was interested in that until very, very late. It was in the last year or two at school I did a bit and enjoyed it, and in university threw myself because of that into everything that was going. So loved it, and just, I don't know, any form of anything to do with, you know, performance or writing for performance, just wanted to get involved and give it a go. But as an actor, like, I've not had, you know, I've pursued bits of training to try and make myself more of a sort of usable professional, you know, over the years. Like, there's been, you know, sort of saw someone about voice training and a bit of sort of physical stuff and bits and bobs just to try and help. But I've not studied acting proper, and, you know, I'm not going to be, you know, I'm not going to be playing Macbeth any day soon. Do you know what I mean? And I have a certain range within acting, which is sort of a man who looks and sounds a bit like me, and has sort of my mannerisms, and, you know, so occasionally, now and again, someone needs a sort of straight man with a moustache, and I'm available, you know.
I did hear, or I did read, that you sometimes felt that the moustache kind of held you back a wee bit as well when it came to auditions.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I do remember saying that. Maybe I've said that. I don't know. No, I think the way I'd think of that now is that there were a couple of points early on where I did shave it off a couple of times, just to sort of see sort of what happened, see if maybe there would be more auditions that I might be able to get into, that kind of thing. Or to demonstrate an extraordinary range of having or not having a moustache. But no, it didn't. It basically didn't work, because they had people without moustaches. There are lots of people without moustaches, and sometimes they, you know, they can manage to cast someone who's really, really good and knows what they're doing, and they might ask them to grow a moustache, or they can put a fake one on. And so I'm not really in that category. I'm just, you know, you're in a pickle. Last minute, you need someone to fill in, who sounds southern and is middle-aged and already has a moustache ready to go. Then I'm your man. Yeah.
One thing that we need to talk about today, and because I think you've already established, I'm a massive Taskmaster fan. It's one of my favorite shows. My kids adored Junior Taskmaster as well. So much so that my 7-year-old, who is out playing at the moment, she has made the conscious effort to come back in and say hello to you at some point whilst we're talking, because she really wants to speak to you. But so talk to me about Taskmaster in particular. Am I right in saying, did you win the original? Were you involved in the original one in Edinburgh?
The stage one, years ago, which must have been 2010, something like that, I think.
Yeah.
Which was, so that was a lot of fun. So that was Alex sort of getting a cohort of us who were going to Edinburgh anyway. And we would just get a little sort of thing. Well, now we realise, fairly sort of classically Alex type instruction once a month, and we would just have to do it. And there was no feedback. It was fun, but it was also quite sort of confusing. I think, particularly from someone from my background who's maybe used to sort of any form of action or assessment, is normally you get the feedback quite quickly. Do you know what I mean? And it's sort of pass or fail. It's quite binary. Whereas here you get a very strange thing, like just send me something big, something like that, or do something with an egg, and it would be quite vague and open to interpretation. And you'd submit what you had, and there was just a single night just one night in the Dome in Edinburgh, which was great fun. And there were sort of, classic Alex style games within the night, the horn section playing, and absolutely lovely and completely arbitrary scoring. So yes, I mean, technically I did win, but I don't think that's necessarily anything to be. Yeah, and it's not a badge of honor. It's a pretty arbitrary sort of outcome, but it was an awful lot of fun. I don't know.
Winning the first one has to be a bit of a badge of honor. But did you think in 2010 when you did that one show, you have any idea that it was going to be as huge as it is now?
Oh yeah, I knew exactly. Yeah, I predicted it entirely. Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. No, I mean, I did, and I don't know if any of us were even thinking in those terms necessarily. I'm sure there would have been people who were more experienced than me at that point who were wondering, oh, maybe Alex is trying to test something out for a format here, and I just thought he was just doing quite a funny Edinburgh show, and that was about it. I mean, this is also a time when, particularly Alex, like, and his gang, you would have, that's like, Mark Watson doing his 24-hour shows, and, the Hotel, which was this big sort of immersive sort of promenade, comedy, improv, theatre event. And so these things were happening in Edinburgh all the time. There were a lot of one-offs. So, yeah, and people obviously were going, to develop things and hope things might turn into telly shows, but there are also people who are just purely doing things for the whim of it, for the Edinburgh of it. So I don't think I was trying to pick apart what this was. I was just joining in.
And you joined in again, series 11. In that show. Now that was one of the COVID years, am I right?
It was, yeah. We got into. I think I'd done 2, because you do half a dozen or so days in the house doing your tasks. And I think I'd done 2, maybe 1 or 2 of those days, and then everything was shut down. So there was then a big wait before we could start again. So yeah, doing I think it must have been my 3rd day back in the house I think it was the first time I left Exeter, basically, after that all started. First time I was sort of, permitted to do so and hit the road and drive some miles. And it was, made it doubly thrilling, actually. It felt like going on holiday. It's absolutely joyful. Driving up these still near empty roads to just have an absolutely lovely day of absurd tasks and games with that beautiful crew.
Obviously, because that means that you didn't actually have an audience then, did you?
We didn't have an audience, no. And we had.
That's me. That's my dog barking, not yours.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well, it'll be mine again in a minute. It'll be. No, we didn't. But that wasn't. And again, that wasn't an issue for me, because I haven't done a great deal of studio type stuff. I've only done a little bit of studio type stuff. Most of the stuff I'd done telly-wise is sort of single camera things like Man Down, and where it's just you and a crew anyway. So I didn't find that off-putting. That wasn't an issue. I do think, Alex and Greg, they're such sort of seasoned sort of war dogs, those two. I didn't faze them either, and I think I got the impression that Greg even quite enjoyed the sort of novelty of it. Greg's amazing with an audience, as you know. We'll play off and have a lot of fun with the audience, but I think just a bit of variety made it fun. And these things fall away. These strange little details, like the fact you're sat together, but you are also sat in quite a large room, and you're sat 5 yards apart from each other, or whatever it might be. These things, they sort of fall away quite quickly, and you get used to things quite quickly. So it was, it felt very natural in the end. And I love sitting there with that, the 7 of us chatting away and talking about these little clips, and
I can imagine
getting bollocked.
What I'm going to ask you this, I'm going to ask you it in a wee bit of a vague way, but hopefully you'll understand what I mean.
Yeah.
Throughout that entire season, there were different tasks that you had done, and there were certain things that happened during some of your tasks that could be said to have, not really happened, or maybe a bit of a play on words or whatever. everything that you said that happened during that recording, did it actually happen? Are you following what I mean?
Everything that I said happened.
Right, okay.
And I've had medical attention since, and I'm much better. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear it's no longer an absolute casserole. I think there's the phrase that was used.
Yeah. No, all is well. Thank you. Yeah.
Good stuff. Glad to hear it.
But I mean, maybe that's an element of COVID again. Do you know what I mean? There's a degree of all of our social skills took a bit of a hit. Do you know what I mean? And perhaps that is a thing with it, whereas there is no audience and you're just in this big old room, and maybe you reveal more than you might otherwise have done if you had a room full of strangers, or if your auntie was sat in the audience 5 yards away,
One of my favourite tasks that you did, and I wish I could remember what the actual the brief was for the task, but it was the mohawk. It was the mohawk and the crown thing coming off of the mohawk. What made you do that? Why did you decide to go for that?
I don't know, really. I mean, I think the brief was something I bring in the most. No, it can't have been the most dangerous thing. It was something along the.
It was something to do with
toughest
danger.
thing, or something to do with toughness.
Yeah,
I think. Oh, maybe it was something along those lines. Like Jamani, I think, had brought a kind of like a baseball bat with a bunch of nails going through it, or something like that. I don't really know. I think that I didn't necessarily. I don't know. I think again it was just. I think it's partly the time. Do you know what I mean? Nothing else was going on. It was a thrill to be out and doing this thing. It's not as if I had that I was booked up to be in the next Star Wars film, and that was going to be starting the following week. It didn't matter one jot what I looked like at all. I didn't even have any gigs booked up for a while yet because that hadn't kind of fired up properly. I was just working from home. So I just fancied it. And I had had a mohawk once before, many, many years ago in my early 20s as an experiment. But that had been an experiment that had lasted about sort of 2 or 3 days and was a sort of with friends traveling type thing. And I was aware that I did look intimidating. I'd been in sort of the Far East and Southeast Asia in those, sort of moving quite rapidly over a few days, and I was aware that I didn't look like necessarily the best sort of guest in these nations, and I sort of got rid quite quickly because I didn't want to be scaring the willies out of people on buses. And it occurred to me that that maybe I should revisit the Mo. I love doing it. I mean, that was fun as well. I had a bit of help because we just had a quick turnaround in between sections. They'd sort of get things set up for the next bit, and they'd move around and spray things down, and people would go for a drink or a snack or a pee. And so we had a matter of minutes to run up to a dressing room where there was Sarah, who's sort of makeup and a hair artist, was there ready with a pair of clippers, and we just got it done in seconds flat. A ludicrous amount of hair products, mousse and spray and the rest of it. A long hat lent to me by Alex, he knew that was going to happen. Greg did not know that was going to happen, and none of the other contestants knew it was going to happen. So Alex was keen for it to be concealed from everyone for as long as possible. Hence the hat.
And I can imagine that hat actually looks like something that would come out of Alex's house as well.
Oh yeah. And it was a sort of last minute thought. I think he realised, we should try and conceal this at the last. I think he did text me to say, have you got a top hat? He thought I might have a top hat, perhaps not unreasonably, but I don't have a top hat. And it also wasn't the time of life where it was very easy to get your hands on a top hat very quickly. And the message was very much had the caveats, if you don't have a top hat, don't worry, because I will definitely have some stuff in my shed that can handle this. Of course he does, Yeah.
And then after that series, sorry, I watched the new episodes on Thursday there, and I'm pretty sure Jason called it a season, and that's where I'm going with it. So after that, you became part of the Taskmaster universe.
Indeed.
When Junior Taskmaster was launched, I suppose first of all, how did that all come about? Was that just a case of Alex picking up the phone, or was there? It was
literally a case of Alex giving me a ring. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was thrilled, and that was lovely. I had no idea that they were doing it, that it was coming, and he'd also called me on a particularly bad day as well, because I'd was staying in London for a few days, and I was doing a run of live shows, and it was a show that didn't get reviewed much, but it was also a show I was quite fond of. Had some quite personal stuff in it, as well as some Shaggy Dog stuff, but had some personal things in it. And someone had alerted me to the fact that I'd been absolutely minced in one of the broadsheets. So I was sort of moping around London, feeling a bit sorry for myself, and trying to gear up and get my mojo working for that night's show. And then Alex just I can see exactly where I physically was at the time, walking through these sort of wet streets in Southwark, and Alex rang, and I was overjoyed. What wasn't something I had to think about for even a whisper of a moment, and which sort of caught me by surprise later, because I could have, like I say, I haven't done much sort of telly entertainment stuff. I've never been a host or a co-host of anything particularly. It's not my strong suit. The places that I feel comfortable tend to be, either on stage doing stand-up or kind of sketch type stuff, or if there are cameras whirring or microphones, then it tends to be sort of scripted type things. That was the comfort zone. But very glad I went for it. And I mean, they couldn't have made it a more pleasurable experience either. I mean, for stars, the fact when I knew Rose was doing it, that was an immense relief, because Rose is much more experienced than me in those environments, and is such a strong host that it means that when you're the co-host, I mean, I'm this sort of Untermensch anyway, right, in the process and in the studio, but she has some big wings that I'm able to hide under it if needs be, and that just makes me more relaxed in that environment, more likely to play and have a good time anyway. And then just the whole show, I mean, the kind of showrunner, really like Alex and the Andes, Cartwright in Devonshire, who produced and directed respectively the main show, and still do. They have a kind of sort of overarching executive role, and Alex was still coming up with lots of tasks and what have you. But in terms of the sort of day-to-day actual making the show, getting the kids and filming it and putting it together, is someone called Mia Cross was the series producer, and Sophie LeGood was her sort of right-hand woman producer. And they were just delightful, and just made it a really joyous job, made it a lot of fun. Made it a lot of fun to do the job, but also you felt like, I think we're actually making a good bit of telly here. Just really like amazingly skillful, talented program makers, who also created a lovely environment to work in. So I hope we get to go again. I don't know yet if we do or not.
Well, you just answered my next question then, because I actually texted Alex yesterday asking him, can I ask about series 2?
You can always ask.
But I think he's on holiday just now, because he hadn't replied yet. So I have asked, and you don't know either, so that's fine.
No, well, you can always ask. Do you know what I mean? I mean, sometimes you learn about this stuff, and they say, please don't announce or whatever. There'll be sometimes there's sort of PR and marketing type people who, there's someone's peeking. Yeah, there's a daughter. Is that you, Erica? Who is that? Is that? Oh, it's Summer. So come in quickly. Hello, Summer. Hang on a second. I'm going to need to put the audio through the speakers, MacBook speakers. There we go. Right. So Summer watched Junior Taskmaster with us as well. Very good. Hello, Summer. Mike, how do you do? Are you on your holidays? Have you got holidays up there at the moment? Yeah. Well, not holiday. Well, yeah, maybe half-term holidays. Yeah. Yeah. Today's an in-service day. Nice. Which is why they're off. But when Summer was watching Junior Taskmaster, she was adamant that she would succeed very well. I'm sure. In the next series, and now that I've got a personal relationship with Alex, I'm like, need to. What age are you, Summer?
11.
Oh, perfect. There we go. That's the age. Well, fingers crossed then, eh? Yeah, it is a lot of fun. Yeah. You just got to be able to muck about and play games. Are you able to do that? Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. Well, there we go. There we go. That you just want to stick your head in and be nosy? Yeah. Is Erica back? All right, we'll tell her to come in about 20 minutes.
Okay, then get this finished. All right, bye-bye.
That's me.
Bye. Now that kind of gives it away. I am literally sitting in a cupboard at the bottom of my stairs.
That's the classic home office, though, isn't it? That's
Yeah,
modern life.
which I've
But yeah,
I've
so we
done.
don't know. We genuinely don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know when we'll know either. You know, that's.
How was it then working with the kids? In particular, as a comedian, because you know sometimes as a comedian you want to push the envelope so much, and you kind of need to work on your instincts. If a joke pops into your head, and then and it might end up being a bit too much for the kids or whatever. But was that quite difficult to try and have that filter on?
I don't know. I mean, I spend most of my time. My kids are. I mean, the age that the kids are, I spend quite a lot of time talking to these sort of people anyway. Do you know what I mean? And also, there is the casting process. I think was very, very good because they saw lots of kids who'd been nominated either by maybe parents or teachers or someone who knew them. You know, word went out on social media. They saw loads of kids, and what the impression I get from the casting gang is that realistically, I mean, any of the kids that came would have had a great time and would be perfectly capable of being brilliant on Taskmaster because they're kids, because they're, you know, the very fact that they've wanted to show up in the first place and indicates that they want to play, and it's the difference between the individuals that makes it magic. So I think then the task is working out of these kids actually who is going to be all right on the day in front of, a live studio audience of a few hundred people with kind of sort of grumpy gaffers and sparks going about, impassively getting on with their work. It's potentially quite a stressful environment, potentially an environment that could get in your head. And even in the house, I mean, they deliberately keep the crew very small, so it's as relaxed as possible. But it can still. There was one person who arrived, and she was very, very nervous when she first got there. And we're able to settle her down and reassure that it was fine, and there's nothing bad is going to happen. Even if of course she were to sort of flee to Ecuador, do you know what I mean? She's not going to go after her. I mean, it's sort of. But then, as soon as she started the first task, she was then just having just a really nice day out, and it was fine. So I think, that was the thing with the kids. So that then makes it easier for you because the people who are there are likely to be kids who have enough confidence to. Someone's checked that they're nice kids. Do you know what I mean? So they're not going to be, they're unlikely to be, smashing the set to pieces, but they're also likely to engage, and so a big part of the battles.
Was there any kids in particular that you kind of, I say bonded with is maybe not the right words, but I can't think of the right words to use, but stood out to you when you were working with them?
I don't know. That's a tricky one, really, because they all had something. And I think that's the thing that made us relax on the day in the studio. Because I think Rose in particular, because she hadn't done the stuff in the house, she's there on the day, and she has the unenviable task of giving them scores, right? And that's easy enough when it's something objective, if it's how many eggs did you balance on your head or whatever, and it's just a numbers thing. But if it's like the task when they have to bring something in, and it's all subjective, that's quite hard. But it was, I think by the time we got to the day itself, we all felt more relaxed about that because we knew that each of them would have their moment when they had shone. In these different tasks they'd filmed in advance, they would all have something that they'd done either really, really well or had been very inventive with, successfully or not, or had just been funny, so they would have their moment in the sun. So I think, so there weren't sort of, because of that, I wouldn't say there was sort of one or t'other that you'd think particularly, because they all had their moments. There were perhaps one or two who had qualities that reminded me a bit of people I knew a bit, or particularly made me laugh in some way, like sort of Persia and Anita. Those.
I think Maisie gave you a bit of a hard time as well, didn't she?
Maisie was delightful. She was very, very funny.
So one of the youngest. I think she was one of the.
She was one of the youngest. It definitely is the youngest. It definitely had a bit of a disadvantage, I would say, because you've got kids at that age. There is such a big change in what you can do. Month by month, year by year. And confidence and strengths and a myriad of things. But yeah, she had a very unusually dry wit for someone our age, and she was a lot of fun. We were very sad to see Maisie go. Yeah, for sure.
So you are now you're in the Alex Horne role of Junior Taskmaster. But when I spoke to Alex back in November, I asked him about the kind of shelf life of Taskmaster, and he said it's not so much the concept that's got a shelf life. He thinks him and Greg have got a bit of a shelf life, and your name came up when talking about potentially taking over from one or the other in the main show. Do you think that you could fill those boots?
Oh, I mean that's not the question. It's not could I, it's would I. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that as well. Yeah.
So there's could and should, and I mean those are threads I don't particularly want to pull on too much. I'm physically seeing Alex at a charity football do he's organised
coming up, yeah,
this weekend. So it would. I don't know. This is the first time I've heard that idea. It would be tempting to push him under some high-speed football boots and step in and secure my future, Game of Thrones style. But I think I'd be doing the nation a disservice. And I think, frankly, I think the Taskmaster world, I think they'd find it very, very hard and very strange to take subs. I mean, I certainly don't think I'd be there. I think you'd have to find something fresh.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah. I couldn't see it. I couldn't see anyone doing either of those roles, frankly. And with my Rose and myself, I mean, it's a different show. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's, if someone had said, "Would you two consider coming and replacing these two in the main show?" That would have been a very difficult decision, and that would have been, because it's one thing doing a job because it's going to be fun and you'd enjoy it, but it's another when it's so preciously held and loved by its audience. I think there's a lot of people that would rather see good things die well than be slowly tortured over many years.
Now, speaking of dying well, you had a heck of an experience driving through. Was it can you say it? Namibia? Is that how you pronounce it?
Namibia.
Yeah, Namibia. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
My pronunciations are terrible. Tell me about that. How was that experience for you?
Oh, that was lush. I mean, that was just something that came out of the blue. And this is all Taskmaster related. None of this stuff would be happening if it wasn't for Taskmaster in the first place. Pamela, shush, my love, shush. It's okay. There's literally nothing there. That was an awful lot of fun. Yeah, that was just an offer out of the blue, and yeah, these program makers doing this world's most dangerous roads show where they get two people who are on the telly now and again and drive around a place, and it just so happened to be that the one they offered for me and another comic called Ola Labib was Namibia. And I mean I've never been to Africa in my life, any bit of it. So yeah, I absolutely leapt at it, of course. And it's the sort of country that's so vast and huge that you could go there as a private tourist, obviously, and you could try and go to these very remote places. But I mean, it would cost you an absolute arm and leg. I mean, it's completely unaffordable to go to the places that we went with the guides that we had, unless you have that kind of thing. So that was an absolute no-brainer for me. And that was another like really nicely run show, like really small crew of very experienced kind of travel and documentary type makers, incredibly well traveled, very experienced makers of telly, and it was just, it was absolutely joyous, extraordinary place. Yeah.
So you said that kind of came off the back of Taskmaster, and like a lot of things came off the back of Taskmaster. Do you like believe that your career kind of took off more after?
Oh God! Oh yeah, hugely. Yeah. It's made a completely enormous difference. Yeah, and before that, the thing. It's all very Greggy as well. Do you know what I mean? Greg's the thing that before that made a big difference was sitcom I was in, Greg's sitcom Man Down. And I think, well, according to Greg, I mean that came about. Greg and I had crossed paths at a couple of gigs, and I think he'd sort of put me on a long list of people that should come and audition, that he thought should come and audition for this part, and that was wonderful. That was a very, very happy time making that show. And that definitely opened the odd other door, the odd other, part in this and that, and, the odd, sort of fun live gig, that kind of stuff. And maybe slightly easy to get someone into an Edinburgh show and, all that kind of stuff. But, you're playing a character. So it's never, if you're playing a character as, if you're a comedian and you've seen a bit as a character, it's not always the easiest thing, particularly sort of supporting characters, to then translate that into getting people to come and see your live shows, your pet projects, your little things that your labors of love. But something like Taskmaster is just so wonderful for that. Partly because it's just you, but more because Taskmaster has this unusual thing where you'll get to know someone over 10 weeks or so. It's not like getting to know them over several years on lots of appearances on this panel show, that panel show, this radio show, whatever it is. You spend a bit of time with them and see them sort of pushed to a couple of quite peculiar limits, and then maybe it's absolutely ideal way of finding an audience. And there will have been people who watched that show who like Taskmaster, who would have seen me and thought, well, I know now that I never want to go and see a Mike Wozniak live show ever in my life. And that's helpful for them and for me. Do you know what I mean? That's fine too. But it has, it enabled me to tour. For example, a show that I've been desperate to polish up and take on the road for a long old time, was finally able to do that. I owe a lot to it, for sure.
Are you coming back up this way anytime soon?
I will be. Yeah, I'm doing. I do a podcast called Three Bean Salad, and we're going to do a little tour in the autumn, and we're definitely going to do at least. It's probably going to be Glasgow. It looks like at the moment. There's a potential it might be Glasgow and Edinburgh, but it might just be Glasgow. And we'll announce the date for that quite soon. And then. I'm working on a new live show at the moment. I don't know when that'll be ready to go on the road. It sort of depends on kind of what happens with Junior Taskmaster, really, if that goes ahead or not. But that wouldn't be until next year at the earliest. But I'd definitely be coming to Scotland.
Talk to me about
again.
the podcast then. Three Bean Salad. It's a big best comedy podcast 2024.
It's a very radical format in which three men who think they're funny have chats with each other. It's really radical. No one else is doing it. But we kind of, so it's me and Ben Partridge and Henry Packer. We've known each other for a long time, written together for a long time, made radio shows together, done all sorts of stuff together, some live things. And it's born of procrastination, really, from our many hours writing together of the sort of the chats we would have before finally getting on with some work, and we're talking sort of 7 hours worth of just mindless chat to avoid actually getting on with some work. And it was Henry actually who thought we should podcast it, and Ben and I thought we thought it was a dreadful idea, and that the last thing the world needed was yet another small group of men who thought they were funny, publishing that stuff in some way. But he pushed and we agreed. And actually, it's just, I just love it. I have a lovely time doing it. It's not, I mean, I say half. 99% of the chat is Henry. Henry is perfectly designed for it. He's like a magical child. He's just flooded with thoughts, and as soon as the microphone is switched on, in a state of verbal diarrhea. This is always, I say this is a compliment. I love the man dearly and everything that comes out of his gob. And Ben and I sort of parry and play. Ben also is like our sort of sound genius, engineer, creator, jingle writer, musician. And Henry does the art, and it's a great source of happiness to me, really. And it's gone from a little experiment to, after a few episodes, we sort of slowly worked out what it is, and it's developed a bit of a life of its own. And we do live shows, and I love doing the live shows because I really love our listeners. That like the audience, just like them, you know.
Yeah,
you all meet them and often have chats with people like during shows and after shows, and you know, it just seem like the sort of people I quite like to go and have a cup of tea with, really. Yeah.
So I'm reluctant to ask the next one because the last time I'd said that I'd read something that you'd said, it turned out you were like, oh, did I say that? So I'm not sure about this, but did you fall asleep during your wife's labour?
Yes, that is true.
That is true. Shamefully true, but I can see the look in your face there. It's just went. Tell us about how was that? What happened? Was it just a long labour?
Well, not astonishingly long, but I mean it long enough for me, as it turns out. And no, I think it's just one of those experiences in your life where you don't quite measure up in the way that you thought that you might. It was a disappointing moment. I mean, I am capable. I'm a very heavy sleeper, and I am capable of sleeping very quickly and very easily, and sort of in any environment.
You're one of those people,
really. Yeah. So but I pushed it to the limits that time. Yes, but yeah, that bit is true. It's a funny old thing, the old quote thing, because it's strangely. Sometimes you get quoted something you've said, and I'm sure that sometimes I've been quoted something I have said, and I've just forgotten that I've said it, and I did say it. But it's definitely also happened that I've been quoted things in the past that I've not said. It's a strange environment to be in. The first time that happened was actually right in 2008 when I'd had that first Edinburgh, and there are a couple of print articles about it. And I got phoned up and interviewed, and I remember reading these things, and they were sort of unrecognizable in terms of like what I'd actually said. Had been sort of paraphrased or sometimes just fabricated or put out of context. And it was sort of chilling, really. It was slightly chilling. I thought and the next, I remember the next interview I had after that was in the Brighton Argus, and I was so conscious of not being misquoted. I was speaking so carefully and slowly that the piece, when it was published, was a sort of character assassination about how monotonous and dull it was to interview. So I think at that point I realized I can't necessarily win. And then increasingly, obviously, you know, we're in the information age and post-truth and all. And so, I think you have to. There's a degree to which you have to sort of relinquish control over the little stuff, or else you'll go mad, I think. Yeah,
that's true. Obviously, I know you obviously know about comedy and you know the writing and things like that. But what do you do for you?
Like, what do I do for me?
Yeah, I'm looking behind you there, and I can see that guitar.
Oh, I'm a dreadful guitarist. Yes, that's a source of pleasure. Definitely. I haven't improved in like 30 years. I don't think. But I do play quite regularly. Regularly and badly, I would say. Well, I don't. I mean, this. So that's electric. I don't think I've physically plugged it into an amplifier. There is an amplifier in the corner, but I don't think I've physically plugged it into the amplifier for years. Though it's been played a lot. I'm quite happy just strumming silently. You know,
it works.
So yeah, so there's that, and there's Pamela down here. Pamela, It's a great source of comfort. I like a dip. Do you know what I mean? That's about it, really. That's me. I'm a simple creature. Yeah.
Best way to be in it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm sort of lucky with the job I have, really, because I mean, that's where the passion is. Do you know what I mean? I like making things, and I like comedy, and like the weekend I've just had up at McCuntliffe, did lots of shows. I did some 3-bean shows, some solo work in progress shows, got involved in one or two other things, and saw some other people's shows, bumped into some friends, was in a beautiful place. I mean, to me, that long weekend has been like I've come back, feeling full of the joys of spring. So that's
good.
Although technically that is also work, and so I'm very grateful. I mean, that's a nice position, to be in. So
Awesome.
I do that for me as well.
Well, wrapping up, I want to this will be purely for me.
Yeah.
This one, given that you are part of a very successful podcast, and I am part of a less successful podcast, have you got any advice that you can offer? I know you said the other guy is like the sound, like a lot that they do with the sound and things like that, but have you got anything that you can offer me as a up and coming podcaster?
I've got no idea, really. I don't know. I've got absolutely no idea. I mean, we have always just made the show that we want to make very selfishly. So there's never been an aim for us. Do you know what I mean? We've never had it's always, the aim for us has always been, this has got to be a kind of side fun project. It can't be the point where this is like, it's the thing we're doing to make a living, and it becomes like a financial issue between friends. And
right, okay.
So it's purely a thing of joy. It was never started as a kind of business venture or anything along those lines. So I think that has meant that we've made something that is genuinely just our thing. And beyond that, I don't think there's anything you can do. I mean, if you've got loads of money, most of us don't, then obviously you can push things and put them on billboards and advertise them on other podcasts and what have you. But I think our audience are just, they have found us, as I think podcast audiences do, and they've slowly found us over time. And I think we've had a bit of word of mouth, because we're not massive. Do you know what I mean? We're not like a kind of like, we're not like an off menu or a shag, marry, and annoyed. We're nothing like that. We've just got our sort of hardcore merry band, but they're a lush band. And yeah, I think when your audience finds you quite sort of naturally like that, then it can be quite a strong bond. But I don't know. I mean, we've got lucky because Ben has had his own podcast that's been running for years, the Beef and Dairy Network podcast, and that's been going for at least a decade, I think. And so we definitely got some listeners from that, came and gave it a go. But what we're doing is slightly different to that. So then they're maybe telling different friends about it. And so I don't know. I don't think that necessarily qualifies as advice. I think if you're, just do what you want, I think. Do what you want and keep at it, I think, is what I'd say to podcasters. And the audience will find you in time.
Well, I appreciate you, first of all, taking the time to talk to me.
Oh, pleasure.
I know obviously you're very busy, and that's great. I also want to thank you for taking the risk with me as well, because I know that Alex reached out to you on my behalf.
Yeah, that's fine.
And that means a lot as well, that that obviously Alex said what he said, and that's great. But it's just thank you for kind of,
it's a pleasure,
following through on it as well, because it's
my pleasure.
It's been lovely, and I've really enjoyed chatting to you. This is my wife Lisa.
Hi.
Hello, Lisa. How do you do?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Chris fell asleep when I was in labour.
Really?
So you would like to mention that.
And that's a wrap on Mike Wozniak. Genuinely loved every single second of that conversation. And if you did too, do me a favour. Hit the like button, hit the follow button, leave a rating, leave a review. Maybe send the episode to a mate who would love it as well. Don't know. That's the best way to keep things going here anyway. Now, if you want to work with me, as I said at the beginning of the show, whether it's coaching, voice work, hosting, or something completely different, then get in touch. Head to chrisduke.co.uk when it's finished, and let's make something brilliant together. And don't forget, you can join the supporters club at thepeerproject.co.uk/supporters to help keep this going. And honestly, it means the world. Everybody who already supports, it means the world. Thank you so much. Thank you again for listening. Thank you again for watching. My name is Chris Duke, and I'll see you next time on The Peer Project.